After 10 years of marriage, I find myself facing the reality of divorce. My wife and I were blessed with 2 intelligent and beautiful children, a 10-year-old daughter and a 3-year-old son. We built a life together, including purchasing our dream home, but the trust that once defined our relationship began to erode. For the first 9 years of our marriage, there was a strong foundation of mutual trust and respect. However, this changed dramatically when I uncovered a web of lies that my wife had spun. The turning point came one fateful day when she claimed she was visiting a friend. My instincts told me something was off, and my suspicions were confirmed when I stumbled upon a text message showing she had actually gone to another man's house. Initially, I chose not to confront her, opting instead to quietly observe her behavior. I became increasingly vigilant, often checking her phone while she was asleep. Just days later, I found another troubling message where she expressed a desire to possess another man entirely. In the early hours of the following day, at 2 a.m., I confronted her about these texts. In a desperate attempt to maintain some semblance of our relationship, she called the man in question the very next day, claiming she could no longer visit him for haircuts, stating that it was creating issues in our marriage. The conversation, which she held on speakerphone, revealed far more than just a profession. It hinted at a deeper emotional connection that had developed. Complicating matters further, my wife suffered from health issues, including kidney stones and a kidney disease. The doctor prescribed her Vicodin to manage her pain, a medication she had used in the past for menstrual cramps without any concerns. Therefore, when she called me at work to say her prescription had gone missing and accused my friend of stealing it, I felt an urgency to locate the pills. I searched our home meticulously for several days, but it wasn't until I found a hidden pill bottle containing 31 Vicodin pills in her purse that my worries deepened. The bottle was unlabeled, a disturbing detail that I couldn't ignore. Despite the weight of this finding, I chose not to confront her immediately, believing it necessary to gather more information before discussing such a sensitive topic. Later that day, she called to inform me that she had told her doctor her pills had been stolen, and he had agreed to issue her a new prescription, which she hoped to collect before the pharmacy closed. After work, I picked up the new prescription but decided against calling her, choosing instead to wait for her return to discuss everything face to face. When she arrived home, her first words were a demand for her pills. She placed her purse down, and I discreetly checked for the unlabeled bottle I had found earlier, but it was absent. She suggested ordering food, and while I drove her car to pick it up, I discovered yet another unlabeled pill bottle hidden in the glove compartment. I took it home with me as I sensed that this was part of a larger issue that could not be ignored. After dinner, I placed the new prescription on the table and set the unlabeled bottle alongside it. She immediately questioned me about the pills from her car, and I replied, asking why she would drive around with our children while keeping such questionable substances in her vehicle. Her response, that my friends had given them to her, did not sit right with me, as it seemed implausible that anyone would simply hand over such potent medication for free. The situation had escalated to the point of jeopardizing friendships and strained our marriage further. That evening, I made the difficult decision to leave with our son, insisting on taking him with me for the night. In the process, I confronted my wife about her substance abuse problem, and she admitted to enjoying the pills. I told her to think carefully about our future, whether we would pursue divorce, separation, or attempt to salvage our marriage. If we chose to work things out, I made it clear that marriage counseling would be a requirement alongside seeking help for her dependency on pills. She agreed, and we began attending counseling sessions, but after just 4 meetings, she quit, leaving me to continue alone. Weeks later, I discovered unopened contraception in my truck after she had borrowed it. This discovery only added to my growing confusion and frustration. Shortly thereafter, one of her friends reached out to me, revealing that my wife had confessed to infidelity with multiple men. When I confronted her about these revelations, she dismissed my concerns, claiming that the friend only divulged this information to help ease her own guilt about terminating a pregnancy. The layers of deception and betrayal continued to unfold, leaving me with an overwhelming sense of loss and uncertainty about the future of our family. I managed to access her voicemails again and heard a troubling message. The caller asked why she was spreading rumors about the two of us seeing each other, expressing feelings of heartbreak but insisting on trying to make our relationship work despite everything. It was hard to comprehend the depth of our issues, but I felt as though I had transformed into a full-time detective. On the 4th of July, I took a trip up north, hoping to find some clarity. However, upon my return, I discovered a text that hinted at her being with another man at our home while I was away. This revelation added another layer of distress to the struggles we were already facing. Then, on August 28, I received the devastating news from my father that he had been diagnosed with cancer. Just 4 weeks later, he passed away, leaving a void that only intensified my emotional turmoil. 5 days before his passing, I caught my wife at the house of the man she was seeing. Enraged and hurt, I decided to take her car and drive it home to confront her, to let her know that I was aware of her betrayal. That night spiraled into chaos as tensions reached a breaking point. A few weeks later, I made another unsettling discovery when I found her cell phone in her car. I had seen her enter the lock code the night before, so I took the opportunity to access it. To my shock, I uncovered a text conversation between her and the other man. They were professing their love for each other and expressing sentiments about how they were destined to be together. They also mentioned their hopes that the situation would blow over soon, suggesting they aimed to navigate through the complications together. I took a photo of the incriminating messages and showed it to her father in an attempt to reveal the truth behind her lies. His reaction was one of disbelief and shock. The following day, my challenges multiplied when someone sabotaged my car by cutting the transmission lines. I contacted the police to report the incident and returned home to confront my wife for the name of her boyfriend. In a surprising twist, she immediately called the police on me, claiming that I had threatened her. I had merely asked a question, but the situation escalated quickly. Later that same afternoon, I took the step of hiring a lawyer, which marked the beginning of divorce proceedings. However, unbeknownst to me, she had already filed for divorce earlier that week. On a Monday, I returned home for lunch and discovered her passed out with our 3-year-old son awake in the living room. I took her phone from her hand and hid it, sensing that I needed to take control of the situation. The following Tuesday, we exchanged messages throughout the morning. When I arrived home for lunch, I found her missing. After searching, I located her at the park with her boyfriend and our son. I pulled in and began taking pictures as evidence. A small confrontation ensued with the boyfriend, who grabbed my arm as I confronted him, expressing my anger and frustration over the entire situation. Before leaving to return to work, I attempted to kiss my wife, hoping to provoke jealousy in him. I made it clear that I intended to fight for my children, as she seemed incapable of prioritizing them. After I returned home from work that day, it appeared she was trying to provoke me into responding angrily. An hour later, the police arrived at my house, taking me into custody based on her claims of domestic violence. She had a witness, who was not her boyfriend, alleging that I had physically harmed her and slammed her against a car. I spent 21 hours in jail for something I did not do, now facing the burden of proving my innocence. In an unexpected turn, I received an order to leave my own house, with nothing but the clothes on my back. My wife obtained a restraining order against me and changed the locks, effectively barring me from accessing my belongings. This entire ordeal has sent me on an emotional roller coaster, leaving me feeling helpless. I am actively attending counseling since April, seeking help to cope with the emotional fallout. My divorce attorney is now managing the domestic issue and is prepared to question my wife, armed with the evidence I have gathered. The inconsistencies in her story are glaring. It is impossible for someone to be in two places at once, and I believe the so-called witness may have ties to her or her boyfriend's circle of acquaintances. Throughout this ordeal, I have remained calm and non-aggressive, even when provoked. My son's presence was a constant reminder of what was at stake. Before this turmoil escalated, my wife and I had discussed the possibility of making the divorce as amicable as possible, an option that now seems completely off the table. The betrayal I experienced was unjust and has caused irreversible damage. A few months ago, I recorded a lengthy conversation with her, where she ultimately admitted that all the lies and deceit had been meticulously planned to manipulate and confuse me. I have retained that recording, which serves as a reminder of her admission of guilt. Among the evidence, I possess a text where she declares her love for the other man, who affectionately addressed her as baby. This entire situation has spiraled beyond my control, and now I am left to navigate the fallout. The statement regarding the belief that they will navigate this challenging situation together raises significant concerns for me. It seems clear that she might be orchestrating a scheme aimed at getting me arrested, which could provide her with a slender opportunity to retain custody of the children. It brings me some relief to know that the courts frequently handle such complex disputes. My attorney is fully prepared to contest her claims, and I remain hopeful that I can reverse the current circumstances and pursue legal action against her for filing these charges that are entirely unfounded. With the latest developments unfolding, I am finally on the path to court where I will assert my rights concerning parenting time. Alongside this, I aim to reclaim my personal belongings on December 16th. I hold on to hope that the proceedings will unfold favorably, allowing me to spend time with my children without the need for supervision, even if that initial time is just for an hour. Reflecting on my own childhood experiences emphasizes the importance of being present for my kids, and I long for the opportunity to enjoy an entire weekend with them. Just yesterday, I attended a scheduled parent-teacher conference concerning my daughter. Upon my arrival, the first comment from her teacher was about my daughter's absence from school that day. Caught off guard, I responded that I had no idea about her whereabouts, as I had not been in contact with or seen her since October. The report card I received during this meeting was alarming, showing the lowest grades I had ever encountered for her, deviating from the usual standards I had come to expect. Furthermore, it was concerning to note that she has already accumulated 11 instances of absences and tardiness this academic year, with yesterday marking number 12. I brought my mother with me to the conference as a precaution in case my ex-wife decided to show up, given that I had arranged this meeting for my benefit rather than for hers. The teacher provided some insights, indicating that my daughter is generally doing okay but noted that her performance does not align with her typical capabilities. It was also mentioned that my ex-wife had a conference scheduled for this week but failed to attend, which has become a common pattern. Looking ahead to next week, I anticipate a somewhat smoother experience. I have 2 critical court dates approaching, one concerning the domestic issue for a final pre-trial and another in family court concerning my parenting time and the retrieval of my belongings. Additionally, I am required to attend a mandatory program for parents navigating through divorce, known as the SMILE program. I am aware that completing this program is essential for moving forward. Amid these legal challenges, I have been actively seeking employment. Over the past 2 weeks, I have participated in 2 job interviews, and the one lined up for this week appeared to be an excellent match for my skill set. However, I received a disappointing call today informing me that I was considered overqualified for the position and that it would likely lead to boredom on my part, which resulted in my application being rejected. Despite this setback, I remain optimistic since my resume is garnering attention, and I refuse to lose hope. Nonetheless, my financial situation is rapidly deteriorating, and I find myself in urgent need of employment. I am open to any opportunity that may come my way. My primary concern is that the upcoming court dates will not hinder my ability to continue my job search. Recently, the final pre-trial concerning the domestic issue took place. I was presented with a no-contest plea deal, which would require me to plead guilty and subsequently enter a year of probation. Should I manage to stay out of trouble during that period, the charge would theoretically be expunged from my record. Although this was a tempting offer, especially given the risks associated with the potential jury trial that could result in a permanent mark on my record, I stood my ground. I refused to plead guilty to something I did not do, accepting the inherent risks that come with maintaining my innocence. During my visit to the court, it was disconcerting to realize that it has been nearly 2 months since the domestic charges were initially filed, and I still have not been able to retrieve any of my belongings. The weather outside was bitterly cold, and I arrived at court without a coat. Upon my lawyer's arrival, he immediately inquired about my coat, and I explained that it remains at home alongside my boots and all my other possessions that I am still unable to claim. His reaction was one of frustration, and he assured me that he would address this issue in court on my behalf. My ex-wife approached the prosecutor and began making unfounded allegations about my supposed driving by our home, which would breach the conditions of my bond. This isn't the first instance in which she has fabricated stories during the hearings I have attended. Each claim she raises has consistently proven to be false. In court, I stood alongside my lawyer as the prosecuting attorney informed the judge that a plea had been offered, which I had declined. Consequently, a jury trial is now set for January 13th. The prosecuting attorney went on to inform the judge that I was in contempt of court based on my ex-wife's claims that I had been driving by our former residence. I maintained my composure, fully aware of the difficult battle that lies ahead. The judge expressed to my attorney the necessity for a serious discussion with me regarding the gravity of the accusations I am facing, noting that these claims could lead to further complications for me as the proceedings unfolded. As the hearing came to a close, my lawyer addressed the judge once more, indicating that he had an important matter to present for consideration. He explained that since the last pre-trial session on November 1st, we have made numerous attempts to coordinate with my wife's legal counsel to retrieve my personal belongings. Each effort has been meticulously documented, yet we have continuously encountered obstacles and delays, leaving me without my possessions. My lawyer emphasized that the only clothing I currently possess is what I am wearing to this hearing. Notably, I am without a coat or boots, and given that the weather outside has plunged to sub-zero temperatures, this situation exacerbates my predicament. The prosecuting attorney interjected, stating that this situation was new information to him. In response to this development, my lawyer formally requested that the court establish a process to facilitate my retrieval of these belongings. The judge directed us to the local police station to arrange for a civil standby, ensuring my presence there would be secured. Following this instruction, I anticipate that tomorrow I will finally have the opportunity to collect my items. I have taken additional measures in light of the circumstances, which may raise some concerns for the prosecuting attorney. However, my intention is to safeguard myself from potential wrongful accusations tied to actions I did not commit. To this end, I plan to keep a detailed diary documenting my daily activities, including destinations, individuals I visit, and specifics of my meals and sleep patterns. When I go to collect my belongings, I intend to bring several friends for both moral support and to serve as witnesses to my actions. The police have informed me that I will have approximately 15 minutes to gather my possessions, but my goal is to secure all my belongings rather than just a single coat. I am weary of enduring unnecessary challenges and incurring legal fees merely to gain access to my personal items, a process that has become convoluted due to the vindictive nature of my estranged wife. In a recent development, I successfully retrieved my belongings with the assistance of a police escort. However, my wife refused to grant me entry into my home. Instead, she placed all of my items into bags and unceremoniously tossed them onto the porch for me to collect. The situation escalated further when, just yesterday, we had a court hearing regarding parenting time. During this session, we engaged in a contentious back and forth regarding the specific times and dates when I would be permitted to see my children. Ultimately, we reached a reasonable agreement, but I was adamant about spending time with my children this weekend. My ex-wife was not willing to compromise, leading the discussion back to the judge. My lawyer emphasized that adherence to the agreement was critical, as deviation could jeopardize my visitation rights. Despite these warnings, I insisted on my right to see my children this coming weekend, asserting that 2 months had passed without any visitation, and I deserved this opportunity. This insistence led to the matter being presented before the judge, who was informed by my lawyer of 3 documented letters I had sent requesting visitation, none of which had received a response. The judge ultimately ruled in my favor, granting me the chance to see my children, which brought me to tears of joy. On the employment front, I had an interview yesterday that I believe went quite well, although I am cautious about celebrating prematurely. My ex-wife's attorney expressed skepticism regarding the suddenness of my unemployment, given my long tenure at my previous job. They suggested that I might be attempting to evade child support responsibilities while depleting my 401k. Until I receive feedback from the interview, it is worth noting that 2 of the 3 references I provided have already been contacted about my candidacy. As I compose this, I reflect on my situation, and despite the challenges, I feel hopeful about the future. In an update regarding my time with my children, I finally was able to spend some quality moments with them. Upon my arrival, their grandmother practically ushered them out the door, quickly shutting it behind them as my ex-wife waited nearby, observing. As soon as my daughter spotted me, she rushed over, elated to see me, and refused to leave my side. We decided to go to IHOP for breakfast together, where my daughter expressed her desire to spend the entire day with me. I took the opportunity to inquire about her school attendance, and it was concerning to learn that she has had 15 absences and tardies this school year. When I asked her if this was due to her not waking up for school or if her mother was failing to assist her in getting there, the conversation circled back to her mother. My daughter admitted that on some mornings, she would wake up but then choose to fall back asleep instead. Her mother should be taking an active role in ensuring that she gets to school each day instead of simply sleeping in after our visit to IHOP. After our breakfast, we had a wonderful time skating together, which was a much-needed break for both of us. During our time together, my daughter, curious and concerned, asked me why I wasn't living at home anymore. She mentioned that my ex-wife had told her that I had left for good and even went as far as to send her a letter claiming I wouldn't be coming back. I took the opportunity to clarify the situation. I reassured her that those statements were not true and promised her that one day she would understand what really happened, but I explained that it wasn't the right time for that conversation. Another question that arose was about Santa Claus. My daughter wanted to know if Santa would visit my home, given that her mother had told her that he would leave half of her presents at our house and the other half at her mother's place. The situation is challenging for me, as I am currently low on funds and must manage my expenses carefully after I drop them off. The ride home after our time together was emotionally charged, filled with reflections and worries. I found myself contemplating how Santa would manage to visit my living space, especially since it would be several weeks before I would start earning any income again. In a moment of vulnerability, I confided in two of my close friends about my concerns. They were incredibly supportive, reassuring me that Santa would indeed come for the kids, regardless of my financial situation. One of my friends even offered to take me shopping the next day to help me pick up a few gifts for my children. The other friend hinted at a surprise he had planned but refused to share any details, insisting that it would ensure Santa's presence. Their support was overwhelming and brought tears to my eyes. After 2 long months of uncertainty and distress, I finally felt a sense of relief knowing that my ex-wife could no longer keep the children away from me. However, I still longed for more direct communication with my daughter. Unfortunately, she informed me that her mother had taken away her Facebook account, leaving me without a means to call or email her. My daughter suggested that I write her a letter and send it via mail, but I am concerned that her mother might intercept any correspondence, read it, and destroy it before my daughter ever sees it. In an attempt to stay connected, I visited the pediatrician's office to request my children's medical records from the last couple of months. Initially, the staff hesitated, presuming that my ex-wife held sole custody. However, I was able to clarify that we share joint legal custody and produced the necessary documentation to substantiate my claim. It came to my attention that my ex-wife had taken our daughter to the pediatrician for an evaluation regarding an issue she had reported, specifically, wetting the bed at my place but not at her mother's home. The medical records indicate that this concern was discussed during the visit, and she was referred to the emergency room for further evaluation. I plan to visit the hospital soon to verify whether my ex-wife followed through with that recommendation and to obtain any relevant medical documentation. Currently, the domestic issue case against me has been closed. During the proceedings, both my ex-wife and her boyfriend testified that they are now in a romantic relationship, which I hope will work in my favor concerning my divorce case. It quickly became evident to me that the jury was not persuaded by her testimony. My documentation effectively supported my version of events while discrediting her claims. A police officer who had taken her initial report also testified in a manner that contradicted my ex-wife's portrayal of her situation upon arriving at the police department. The official report noted that there were no physical marks on her body, which was inconsistent with her claims of a violent encounter that should have resulted in visible bruises. Ultimately, the jury reached a not guilty verdict in just half an hour. Moving forward, I now aim to have her removed from my residence, lift the existing personal protection order, and consider pursuing charges connected to parental alienation. I believe that current circumstances are trending in my favor. I have a court hearing scheduled for Monday before the judge overseeing both my divorce and the personal protection order case, and I am anxious to see how it all unfolds. Previously, I noted that I had a redacted version of the police report, many sections of which were blacked out due to my fears of potential repercussions if I sought to obtain it. However, upon discovering that the case had been closed, I felt more empowered to acquire an uncensored version of the report. The version I eventually received contained significantly more detail. Within the documentation, my ex-spouse made allegations to the police regarding past offenses I endured as a child, implying that they were of an intimate nature. While it is true that I experienced child offenses, these incidents were solely physical and never intimate. Therefore, her accusations in the report are categorically inaccurate. The Child Protective Services caseworker, along with the police, conducted interviews with my children. During these sessions, my daughter stated that she wears regular clothes rather than pajamas when she stays at my residence, which contradicts the narrative being presented. This evidence strengthens my position and furthers my resolve to gain a more pronounced role in my children's lives. The issue of waking up feeling damp or wet can be attributed to sweating, as she had pointed out. She took the step to inform her mother about this situation, which led to advice from my soon-to-be ex-wife, STBXW, regarding the potential for an offense. Importantly, the report indicates that no physical evaluation occurred, which is a relief in this context. This situation has provided clarity on why my daughter sometimes seems fearful of me. It appears she has been exposed to a significant amount of misinformation. While I have been aware of this for some time, I lacked concrete evidence to support my concerns. Despite the circumstances, it is clear that my daughter does not genuinely fear me. On the contrary, she often seeks my company and affection when we are out together with other children, which is a source of pride for me. I have made it a priority to ensure she understands that honesty is important and that I appreciate her truthfulness. In a recent update, I spent 5 hours in court where my attorney was called back into the judge's chambers on 4 distinct occasions. Ultimately, the judge decided to schedule a trial hearing for this matter a month and a half later. This outcome required me to pay $1,000 for what turned out to be an unproductive day in court. It felt as though the judge assumed I had nowhere else to turn, as if my circumstances, having been incarcerated and forced out of my home, were insignificant. This situation incites a deep sense of frustration within me. The safety of my children hangs in the balance, and the urgency of the matter feels entirely overlooked. I find myself grappling with uncertainty concerning my life. After discussing my situation with my attorney yesterday, I inquired about potential avenues for expediting the process. He suggested the option of presenting the case to an arbitrator, to which I agreed, hoping it would serve as a means to resolve this ongoing turmoil. I am reaching a point of exhaustion with this entire ordeal. Although temptation lingers to give up, I know that yielding would only place my children in further jeopardy. A close friend has offered to assist me in finding a different attorney because he suspects that my current one is not effectively managing the situation. He even expressed willingness to cover the retainer fee. Yet, I am left feeling trapped, lost, confused, and emotionally stressed, contending with an array of feelings typical of someone in my predicament. My recent court experience culminated in a contempt ruling against me, which stemmed from my attorney's failure to provide me with a court order requiring the transfer of the remaining balance of my 401k within the designated timeframe. Despite my attorney insisting that I turn over the funds, he neglected to inform me of the existence of the court order until 5 weeks had elapsed after it was issued. As a result, I have been instructed to pay her attorney $750 within the next 7 days, a sum I do not possess, alongside the obligation to reimburse all funds spent on marital assets after the date of the order. When questioned by the judge regarding my delay in handing over the funds, I answered truthfully under oath, attributing the issue to my attorney's oversight in not presenting the order to me sooner. The judge then queried whether I had been present in the courtroom on the day the order was drafted, to which I confirmed my attendance. He expressed disbelief that I remained unaware of the discussion taking place, but I clarified that the matter had been deliberated privately, without my knowledge or involvement. My attorney's frustration with me for his apparent loss of credibility is secondary to the gravity of this situation. I am thoroughly exasperated and plan to request that my attorney draft a settlement agreement. I am willing to concede everything, the only things I wish to retain are the shoes I am wearing and my peace of mind. Life will inevitably go on, and I understand that material possessions can be replaced. However, what weighs heavily on my heart is the emotional impact on my relationship with my daughter. She has been manipulated into turning against me, and during our visits, I find her lacking any affection towards me, which is increasingly painful to endure. I recognize the importance of being present in my children's lives and that they need me. Yet, I am reaching a breaking point, unable to sustain this emotional turmoil any longer. On May 10th, I attended a hearing regarding my home and custody of my children. The judge opted not to remove her and grant me custody, citing the pending report due in 2 weeks. Consequently, I was forced to relinquish my home and was ordered to pay $1,640 monthly in child support. Given the circumstances, I stopped paying my mortgage, as there seems to be no avenue to regain possession of the house. Furthermore, the personal protection order against me was downgraded to a civil order, permitting me to communicate with her via text. Today, I faced yet another court appearance, and I feel consistently subjected to unfair treatment at every turn. My lawyer appears to be ineffective, and I am left in dire financial straits, homeless, and facing a daunting order to pay $4,800 in legal fees to her attorney or risk incarceration. The weight of this entire situation is overwhelming, leaving me in a state of emotional distress and uncertainty about the future. The pursuit of my father's estate, which represents my only glimmer of hope in this overwhelming situation, has been a grueling experience. I am currently battling for a mere $22,000 from the estate, yet it feels like every effort is in vain. My circumstances have left me in a state of despair, as I navigate a staggering $180,000 in debt. This relentless pressure has stripped away my faith and hope, creating an immense burden that makes it difficult to envision a future where life can return to a semblance of normalcy. The emotional weight of my situation is overwhelming, and I often find myself on the brink of a nervous breakdown. I want to take a moment to extend my heartfelt gratitude to everyone who has rallied around me during this trying time. Your support, advice, friendship, and encouragement have been invaluable. Despite pouring every ounce of effort and energy into my struggles, the financial strain has left me destitute, unable to afford the legal representation I so desperately require. The stress has manifested physically. A recent doctor's appointment revealed that my blood pressure was dangerously elevated at 151 out of 100. Although subsequent tests indicated that I was essentially healthy, I expressed my concerns about experiencing chest pains earlier in the week. Consequently, the doctor ordered an EKG and expedited a referral to a cardiologist, which has added further anxiety to my life. The combination of being broke, homeless, and feeling grossly mistreated has been almost unbearable. I can't help but reflect on the unfairness of it all. I have done nothing to warrant this turmoil. If there's one piece of advice I would share with others, it is to think carefully before tying the knot. Last Friday was particularly disheartening when I appeared in court for a custody hearing. The report presented by my ex-wife was riddled with falsehoods. She claimed that I frequented bars every night, returning home intoxicated, despite the fact that I only visited a bar 3 times during our marriage. Moreover, her assertion that she never engaged in drug use was contradicted by her hospitalization following a suicide attempt, which she attributed to a moment of desperation where she threatened to harm my property. Regrettably, the court sided with her, awarding her physical custody of our children. As I sat in that courtroom, tears streaming down my face, I turned to my attorney and uttered my desire to end the battle. I realized I had no chance of prevailing in this situation. My attorney understood my feelings and offered to expedite the process, which I reluctantly agreed to. I ended up relinquishing my house, depleting my 401k savings of $1,300, and agreeing to pay my ex-wife $3,200 in back child support in installments. While it has been a painful transition, I find solace in knowing that my life is no longer trapped in limbo. Moving forward, I must shift my focus onto myself, despite being left with $6,000 in lawyer fees. The hard work I put into my job, working 60 to 72 hours a week with the intention of saving for retirement and providing for my children, seems to be in vain due to these unfortunate circumstances. I am deeply appreciative of everyone who has supported me during this ordeal. Though we may not share a personal connection, I feel a bond with each one of you. As I reflect on my journey, I realize that the time taken off to engage with these issues was necessary. I had endured enough uncertainty, with only favorable outcomes in the domestic trial. Ultimately, I achieved joint custody, allowing me to see my children weekly. I am hopeful that one day they will learn the truth about what their mother did to our family. In a surprising turn of events, life has presented me with a newfound happiness. I ended my relationship with my previous partner and have found a genuinely wonderful woman who treats me with the respect I deserve. It has been a long and arduous journey to reach this point, filled with significant challenges, but I am pleased to share that my girlfriend and I have been living together for about a year now. She embodies everything I ever wanted in a partner. Had I met her years ago, my life may have been very different. She has 1 daughter, and together with my 2 children, they have formed strong bonds. My girlfriend brings immense joy into my life. She consistently shows her affection, preparing my lunch each day and offering a sweet kiss before I head off to work. This kind of tenderness was absent from my previous marriage. Despite my initial vow never to marry again, this remarkable woman is making me reconsider that stance. We met on a dating platform, and during our first date, we were shocked to discover that we had attended school together. This revelation was just the beginning. Our shared interests and values have drawn us closer in ways I never thought possible. I treasure every moment we spend together. To anyone reading my story, I want to emphasize that there is indeed light at the end of the tunnel. Patience and perseverance are crucial, so keep your spirits high as you navigate your path. Moving forward, I invite you to stay tuned for the next chapter in my life as we transition to a new story filled with its own array of challenges and experiences. She left a day before my brother departed, so I initially felt reassured that there was nothing to concern myself with at that time. We don't have any children together yet, which added to my sense of calm. However, about 2 weeks later, my neighbor casually mentioned that my brother had been seen holding hands with my wife. This revelation struck me as deeply troubling. My brother is already married, and it was particularly odd to note that his wife bears a striking resemblance to mine. I had always considered that coincidence somewhat peculiar, and I often justified it by thinking that my brother might simply have mistaken my wife for his own due to his advancing age and the confusion that could accompany it. One day, after returning home from a long day at work, all I could think about was the refreshing relief of a shower. I entered my room, only to be greeted by a scene that shattered my sense of normalcy. My wife, shirtless and asleep, was lying next to my naked brother. I have never been one to engage in physical altercations. I had never been in a fight before. However, witnessing that betrayal ignited a primal instinct within me. In a fit of anger, I grabbed his foot and yanked him off my bed, shouting in disbelief and rage. My wife stirred awake, instantly launching into the all-too-familiar excuse of, "It's not what it looks like." The truth, I later learned, was far more damning. They had been involved in an affair for the past 2 years. In the aftermath of that shocking incident, I felt compelled to inform my brother's wife of what had transpired. I revealed to her that this was not the first instance of infidelity on his part. At that point, she had clearly had enough and initiated divorce proceedings against him. I followed suit and filed for divorce as well. My wife, in a desperate bid for reconciliation, pleaded with me to forgive her. It became evident to me that her desire for a second chance was driven by the impending reality of homelessness. Her circumstances would drastically change if I were to go through with the divorce. We had been together for 4 years, but my faith in family had been irrevocably shattered. My brother, once the last remaining relative I could count on, now felt like a complete stranger. I had been cautioned against marrying American women, yet I am American myself. This experience has led me to form a disheartening belief that some American women can be among the most unfaithful individuals. Recently, I received news that my ex-brother contracted the coronavirus. Unfortunately, there was nothing I could do, and I found out he had been suffering from it for some time. Our sister FaceTimed me, displaying his deteriorating condition, which appeared quite dire. She suggested that we communicate to find some closure, but I declined her offer. In my mind, he was no longer my brother, and I felt no obligation to engage with him. As for my wife, she still desperately seeks my forgiveness, often resorting to kneeling in front of me in her pleadings. My response remains firm: no. The answer is still a resounding no. Regarding my ex-brother's situation, I do wish him luck, even though he has spent his life indulging in smoking and drinking. The news of his possible passing due to the virus leaves me indifferent. After everything that has transpired, I do not feel remorse or sorrow for him. My wife faces the possibility of homelessness but seems too embarrassed to seek help from anyone. While I understand there are many women who would never cheat, my trust has been shattered, not just in her, but in family as a whole. I have 2 brothers and 2 sisters, making me the middle child in a family of 5 kids. Although I have never been a parent, witnessing the turmoil that my parents are experiencing fills me with sadness. I know I shouldn't wish harm upon anyone, especially not my own family. My mother expressed concern, cautioning me that if I choose to sever ties with my brother over my marital issues, I would come to regret it. Yet, I cannot force myself to reconcile with someone who has caused me so much pain. It is indeed a shame that familial bonds can harbor such deep-seated animosity. In a moment of overwhelming emotion, I told my mother that I simply cannot bring myself to speak to him, after which I walked away, tears streaming down my face. My ex-brother is on the brink of death, and the general consensus is that he will not pull through. While I wish him well in spirit, I can't shake the feeling that this might be a consequence of his life choices. Who am I to judge his fate? Do I feel any remorse for him, or will I miss him? The answer is no. Instead, jealousy and resentment have taken root within me. If I were to engage in a conversation with him, even while taking necessary precautions, it would likely not end well. My deep-seated resentment would likely manifest in harsh words. I could see myself telling him that he got what he deserved or something along the lines of, "Have fun burning in hell." It's better to remain silent than to speak ill when there is nothing positive to convey. Forgiveness, at this stage, seems completely out of reach. When I confronted my wife about her infidelity, she lamented that every woman cheats when they don't get what they want. I inquired about what she wanted and she replied that she desired a better life. She attempted to apologize for the hurt she caused, emphasizing that she acknowledged my love for her, which she framed in the past tense. In a desperate attempt to escape the fallout of her actions, she even suggested that I could find someone better than her. But to be honest, after everything I have experienced, everyone seems the same. She said it, not me, but now I truly understand. I have experienced betrayal in relationships more times than I can count, and perhaps it is because those partners were always searching for something they believed to be better. It is a disheartening realization. Reflecting on the past, it seems that individuals once held themselves to higher standards of respect and integrity. I find myself contemplating what has brought about such a drastic change in our society's values. In recent days, my life has taken an even more painful turn. My brother passed away just a couple of days ago, and I am grappling with the weight of loss and the flood of memories. We had reconciled our differences in our own unique manner before his passing, and I can still hear his voice offering me a piece of wisdom that resonates deeply within me. He insisted that trust is a fragile thing, not just in the context of romantic relationships with women, but in all human interactions. While it's true that women can exhibit cruelty and betrayal, he reminded me that no one is inherently better or worse, everyone is flawed in their own way. He pointed out an example from our own family, our mother, who engaged in an affair with a man our father despised, resulting in my very existence. This led to a complicated family dynamic, yet she had the audacity to label others with disparaging terms. I can't help but wonder if our father looks back with regret over his choice to stay with her, raising me under circumstances fraught with conflict. It was particularly telling how, during a moment of illness, he urged her to seek help from the man who had played a role in our troubled family history. This revelation speaks volumes about the imperfection of human nature. None of us are infallible, regardless of our best intentions. My brother's words echoed in my mind as he told me to brace myself. Life would undoubtedly confront me with challenges far greater than I could imagine. At 28, I have much ahead of me, completing my semester, graduating with a degree in engineering, and preparing to serve in the military as an engineer. He expressed pride in my achievements but also made a solemn request. He urged me not to enter into marriage while serving in the military, cautioning that some women may be attracted to the benefits associated with that life and may prove unfaithful during long absences. He was adamant that women should be viewed solely as sources of pleasure or companionship, and while I disagree with that sweeping generalization, I see the merit in his warning about the potential risks of military marriages. Reactions to this perspective may vary, but it's a reality I must acknowledge. Amid these reflections, I've also faced personal turmoil. My soon-to-be ex-wife has taken refuge in her car, and upon informing her of my brother's death, she broke down in tears. Despite her difficult circumstances, she seems to be managing, which is perhaps a small comfort. When she confessed her feelings for another man, someone I had once considered family, I told her a chilling thought: should she find herself in a situation resembling my brother's, perhaps she would encounter him again in another existence. It sounds harsh, but I'm consciously setting aside my emotions. Numbness has crept in as a protective mechanism against the pain of loss and betrayal. I refuse to be overwhelmed by feelings that cannot alter what has transpired. My brother's perspective rings true: nobody is flawless. Nonetheless, that awareness will not lead me down a destructive path where I compromise my future for the sake of two individuals who have already hurt me profoundly. I am resolute that she is no longer my concern, just as he is not. Life continues, and I must prioritize my own journey without being dragged down by their choices.